Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday. The S&P 500 was down 1.6% today. Kind of a really wild ride today, a little bit like yesterday, but a little different. We opened up quite high, about 3% high, based on some comments about negotiations happening within the tariffs from the Treasury Secretary. And then we got up to like 4% high and then kind of eroded all day long. Got down into the 2.7% range, a little rally at the end. So, altogether, it's, the day before these tariffs come due. The main drop seems to be the fact that they've reconfirmed that the China tariffs will start at midnight tonight at 104%. And so, there's an awful lot of product that comes into the US from China, a lot of companies that use those products to finish their, different products as far as that goes. And so, this would be a big deal if it sticks. Again, if it's just negotiating, who knows? You can see how much the market wants to believe that something's going to happen. We saw that yesterday with the rumor of the 90-day delay, creating a huge run up in a very short period of time. Saw that a little bit today too. So, but I think in the end, people don't want to have a risky asset that they're sitting on heading into these tariffs in case they do happen. It makes this the most difficult scenario to deal with because things can change very rapidly to the upside or even to the downside just based on what's being said. So again, let's just review what I was talking about a little bit yesterday and what you're supposed to watch for. So for example, let's take 2022. So that market was down from a high point to a low point of 28%. That ended, in October 13th of 2022. However, if you look closely at that run, we had two giant runs, one smaller run, but two giant runs, one 15% up, one 18% up. Both of those failed and they ended up going lower past that point. And the thing that you have to realize there is that, again, when we look at these markets, we see these big run-ups, we see momentum, we want to get involved in that momentum. We feel like, okay, things can continue to go. But the one thing that you really have to pay attention to in that particular environment was the Federal Reserve was still raising rates. We went from 0 to 5.525% rate increase in a short period of time. So yeah, the market's running up. There's some rumors out there, things are going good, but they're still raising rates. And as long as they're raising rates, you should be on the sidelines. And once they stopped raising rates, then the market finally was able to catch a footing, and we've been running ever since. We're still in a bull market that started on October 13th of 2022. That could change actually tomorrow. We got very close. The official end of a bull market is when you drop 20%. We basically got into that level today and bounced back out. So we're very, very close right now to being what they call bear market. The death cross of the 50-day moving average coming through the 200-day moving average is less than 1% away. So, these things are happening as far as that goes. And we're going to end this bull market that started back in 2022. But my main point is, if you were watching closely and you're looking at all the technical indicators and looking at the stock market direction and all the things we normally look at, you would have been wrong on all of those run-ups because the true thing you had to watch for was what the Federal Reserve is doing. So this is, again, the same type of thing. This is a manufactured crisis that could be turned around tomorrow. It could turn into a structural problem if they're allowed to continue with these tariffs for long enough. Potentially, there's always the risk that something breaks, like what happened in 2008 when Lehman Brothers failed, those types of things. But so we're going to be watching what the White House says and does. So today, they didn't say anything positive about the markets. There was some comments about, the negotiations that were ongoing. But after hours yesterday, the response was an extra 50% tariff on China, and that was reconfirmed again today. So that's enough of a negative to go from a 4% up to nearly a 2% down as far as that goes, especially since it comes into effect tomorrow. You look at Congress. Okay, so Congress could take away the tariff authority from the president. They could start to do stimulus bills. They could cut taxes. They could do something along those lines that might start to, create a good environment for the stock market. And on any one of these changes, I would personally start to get back into the market. As I said before, we still have a 23% exposure to the stock market within our overall portfolio because of people that have high capital gains pieces that they wanted to keep and that we recommend they keep in this environment. But how do we get back in? So be watching for those things. So look at the Federal Reserve. So today, the Federal Reserve, a couple of Federal Reserve representatives come out and talk about how They don't think they're going to want to cut rates until they see the actual effects of these tariffs. Well, problem with that is that could be a couple months off, and you could have a lot of deterioration by that point in time. And of course, the Fed historically messes up at the timing. They're too late to raise rates. They're too late to lower rates. It's not unusual. And what they're talking about, if tariffs kick in tomorrow, could be an issue. Waiting for them to have impact when they're this big, you might want to be cutting rates before that. But let's see what happens. You never know. They could cut rates next week or the week after, depending what happens. They can move very fast. They moved very fast during the pandemic. And so there's some, hope there. Then you want to look at kind of what's going on in the court system. Again, there's a case trying to take away the tariffs because the, president can only do tariffs under an emergency situation. And, what's the emergency? And the courts can decide that. Ultimately, that probably goes to the Supreme Court. Who knows what they would do, but it would probably take some time. So, but these are all things that you want to watch for to see kind of when things might be improving. So today, none of those happened. The market went from positive to negative. That's going to continue as far as that goes. So after hours, there's more information about negotiations and what have you. People coming to the table. So that could be something that really starts to become a positive as far as that goes. If they can get something in place, then the market can at least, digest like what are the numbers? Are they really this high? Are they lower? Where are they? That type of thing. How is that going to impact earnings? Who's going to make money in this environment? Who's going to not make money in this environment, and et cetera. So, this is a super hard environment. You take Apple; it's a really interesting study. So, let's say that Apple has this 104% tariff on things that they're these phones for example. So iPhones sell for 1,000 or 1,500 or whatever, might be selling for 2,500 to 3,500 or whatever happens. But what happens is Apple's can say, okay, look, we're going to pass all that tariff along to the consumer and sell these phones for 2,500 to 3,500. Well, they're not going to sell very many because they're so expensive. So that would impact their earnings and their revenue. Or Apple could decide, well, we're going to keep selling them for 1,000 to 1,500, and we're just going to absorb the cost on our side of these excess tariffs. Of course, that would eat into their earnings quite dramatically. And of course, stock price is very related to earnings. So these are the issues. And companies like that, they can't really get out of the way. There's nowhere to go as far as that goes. I did read an article saying that they were flying plane loads of, product out of China to get it before the tariffs kicked in tonight. So, these are pretty extraordinary times as far as that goes now. It's hard to tell what's going to happen here, what they're going to actually do. That's what makes this difficult. Is this actually going to work or not? I think even if this works, though, we're talking about a really tough transition. And I'm pretty happy to not be sitting through that transition with significant exposure to the stock market at this point in time. So, look forward to seeing what's going to happen tomorrow. Be a very important day tomorrow because of the tariffs kicking in. See if there's some changes. See if they come up with some different comments and what have you to see if there's some more news on the negotiations as far as that goes. So hang in there. We're still going along here. There will actually be probably some really good opportunity in here at some point in time. There's a massive inflow of money coming in from individual investors who are trying to buy the dip here. Which is, I have no problems with that whatsoever. Just from a strategy standpoint, I would rather be buying based on what's happening in the issue of tariffs, not so much what's happening with the market, because I usually work with what's happening in the market, but you kind of switch over during the pandemic, switch over during the 2022 period. In 2022, as long as they're raising rates, all of those runs failed. And so unless you're a short-term trader, which I'm not, I'm going to wait until I start to see some more concrete proof coming through that these tariffs are starting to get better, and we'll buy in a little bit at a time every time we hear something good. And if you did that in the pandemic and you started to buy in when Congress passed that first stimulus bill, when Fed started to lower rates to zero, you were actually getting some decent prices and some decent turning points in the end. So anyway, that's what I'd recommend here is just kind of wait and see what's going to happen. Listen, watch White House, Congress, the courts, the Federal Reserve, see what they do, see what they say. Today, everything they said, I think, contributed to the big swing from being up 4 to down almost 2. So, that's fine, but let's see what happens going forward. Every day is going to be different here, I can tell. So anyway, look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and have a good evening. Thank you.